Hey guys, welcome back to another class. Thank you guys for showing up. I'm hoping that you guys have been liking a lot of the classes we've been releasing so far. Big reminder again, we're going to be holding a raffle at 1,000 subscribers. If you are somebody that hasn't been looking at the channel, if anybody's here, I'm going to just quickly put a link to the class. Usually after I'm done with the class, I decide to just upload it. There might be a little bit of a delay on this one, so just kind of heads up on that one. But once we reach 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to be giving a little C9 jersey raffle. So make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. That's a good way for you to get an entry. Okay. As to the topic at hand, ISO. He is currently insane. Hey, Corn, would you mind? Oh, thank you. So ISO currently is an insane character. He's one of those characters that just came in, was completely terrible at the meta. He was not going to be fitting in. The dive meta is slowly dying out. If you guys haven't been noticing with the way that a lot of the comps have been moving, a lot of the way that we're playing the game, it's no longer just go in, Korean jet, just right click, right? It's no longer that same meta that we had at the beginning of the game. We're slowly progressing into a slowly more methodical meta. So what happened? We're starting to see that change again. We're trying to bring it back into more duelist focused, into more gunfight focused metas. And ISO has been under the radar for a little while. He's been dormant. And then a new change came out. Everybody was excited about Neon. But guess what? ISO was actually the biggest change to it all. We're going to talk a little bit about why he is that change. We're going to talk a little bit about his shield changes again, just in case you didn't really pay attention to the patch notes or you didn't really look at the video prior. And then we're going to talk about some things that you can do with that particular change. So, on to the changes. His shield. You no longer have to pop it and then get a kill in order for you to be able to use the shield effectively. You now have something that's a little bit more effective. So the problem with this shield was you had to pop it, get a kill, and then if you managed to miraculously hit the dot before, anything else happened, you'd be okay. That is until someone randomly decided to spray you through a smoke and then you were instantly tagged, you couldn't move. The shield felt like it was more of a hindrance than anything else. Now they've made the change so that now that you're tagged, it's not really that big of an issue. Okay? When you have that shield, you essentially get about, it's just the equivalent of one hit. It could be a race ult, it could be an op hit, it could be any shot through the wall. It could be as little as 10 damage to as high as 150 damage, right? The shield can cover a lot of ground. And the problem with it is you can pop it before a fight. You can get the shield again and then do it again. What's happening with this shield is that since you can now activate it at any point in time in order for you to take that fight, he's essentially becoming this kind of masterclass of a design of you should be taking this fight at all times. You shouldn't be afraid of taking the fight with a character like ISO. Okay? His double tap now gives you then an indication of that damage. That's not really that big of a change. But the big thing is, again, you can refresh it at any point in time. So kill chaining is insane with him. Okay? The changes in the meta are not just, oh, he's really good at, taking that first fight and he might be good at entry. Oh, he's really good at countering those Deagle users or those op users. No, he is insane at taking those fights. Let's talk a little bit past that. The thing that really works with him is just the map pool currently. I don't know if you guys haven't noticed, but currently with the way that they've rearranged the map pool, a lot of the lanes are dominated with those 50-50 encounters. Okay. I will be talking a little bit more in detail about this, but if you don't really know what a 50-50 is, one person swings, the other person swings. It's a 50-50 encounter with one person winning and one person losing. You could win, you could lose, right? Better aimer wins. Usually that's how it works. With someone like ISO, you're essentially giving yourself a little bit more leeway when it comes to that fight. So when it comes to these maps, you're going to notice that something like Ascent, we have that mid lane, we have B, we have A, all of those are completely dictated by those 50s if you're really good at the game. Something like Haven, same thing again. You're swinging out mid, you're swinging out garage, you're swinging out into somebody that's taking the fight on A, you're taking the fight over on C. These fights right here are completely dominated by somebody that is just designed to take those fights. So if we're looking at pro play, the character's busted. Someone that could design an entire team around utility could be easily countered by a dude that's just going to swing. I peek, I kill. That's his entire dogma. That's an entire way of living. That's exactly what he wants to do. So when you're looking at when to pick an agent, you should be looking at those maps that have those lanes. Now you're going to notice that I put 2 lanes down below. You still want to hold on to Raze when it comes to bind. There's some areas where he's still not as useful. I don't know if you're going to notice, but he's really not that effective at taking hookah. He could take it, but then jumping out, that's a problem, right? He can still take that B long lane. He can still take that A long lane, like around showers. Again, that's still fine by him. But the second he has to jump into short, a lot of different positions might be a problem for him. So what you want to avoid are maps like Icebox and Bind, where the second that you step out, there's multiple lanes that you have to worry about, multiple shots that you have to be dealing with. Because his main objective is to take the 50 as unfairly as possible. The second that you give the advantage to somebody, your shield is useless, and you're just a sitting duck. That's why these maps down here are at the bottom. The other ones have a little bit more on that. So for example, if you haven't been playing Abyss, I'm going to be releasing something on that much later. I'm still doing a little bit more work on it. But you're going to notice that maps like Abyss, maps like Lotus, these maps still have these really long lanes that you can contest and control. And because of that, you can give your team so much utility and power just by being able to push. He essentially empowers the team by giving them numbers and giving them a lot of fights. So maps to avoid. You can still play these two. I'm not going to say anything against it. Again, people say don't play Rain on this map, don't play Rain on this map. You can still play Rain on that map, right? Same way you can still play ISO on this map, on these maps right here. But if you really want to get used to his kit, try to pick these 5 maps up here. You can still use a player like Jett. You can still choose Raze on this map. They're still effective. They're still just as good on that one as it was before the ISO changes. So I still suggest you still keep those agents in that map pool. But with these ones right here, I encourage you guys to try him out for these areas right there. Okay, so for what we talked about his kit, those 50-50s, they are insane. So your main objective is to take that first fight. If you feel like you're someone that's not very confident in taking that fight, I need you to rest assured that it's purely just anxiety. Because what's happening is when you're looking at that 50-50, it is no longer a 50-50. The second you pop that shield and you swing someone that is holding that angle, you have an extra 10% chance of winning that. So it could be like a 60-40, could be a 7-30, okay? 70-30, maybe 80-20. What's happening is when you're looking at a character like ISO, you have so much leeway to essentially swing and still win. Because what's happening is with the changes, you can swing. Maybe you miss the fight. You're not going to be tagged. You can go back into cover. You can get your bearings. You can ask for help. You can look for different ways of taking the fight. And then you can go back in. You can do the same thing with maybe potentially pushing out of any lane right here, right? You're going to notice that he's got a lot of these angles that he can contest just simply because he has that shield to kind of proc at the beginning, and then he can just use it to take the fight later, right? Your job is to take that swing. Your job is to take that fight. If you're someone that's not that confident, I encourage you to try TDMs, not normal DMs, just try TDMs and learn to just swing. If you get a chance to play ISO, go ahead and play ISO. I think he's a really good character since you have to constantly reset your shield. So it's going to give you a chance to kind of practice that aim movement. I feel like it's kind of funny to say, but he's like a little bit of an aim labs god. So I suggest that you try him out and learn to swing. The more you learn how to swing, the more you feel confident with it until the change happens. I'm sure he's going to be nerfed. But what's going to happen is in the meantime, try to use that as a little bit of a crutch to learn how to swing opponents. Use that as a crutch as a way of winning these fights because he's going to be a very effective tool in contesting these angles. Okay. I'm going to give you a couple tips here. Make sure that when you are popping your shield, you're aware that it makes noise. They're going to know that you're going to pop that shield and they know you're going to be taking that swing. The second that you hear that pop from an enemy ISO, try to avoid that fight. Okay. That means that that angle is now dominated. He's that strong. You don't really want to deal with him all too much. I know that a lot of people feel like, oh, I can just win that one. I can assure you, you are already at a disadvantage. A fight that favors ISO is the one that he has a shield on. So do not give him that chance. Try to take maybe, for example, different things in order to be able to fight him. Try to use utility. Try to push him away from an angle. And this is where the next little bit is. If you're an ISO player, be wary of straight fire and wallbangs. So as an ISO, I can assure you that you have more than enough time to play away from cover and still be able to run back into it. There's so many chances for you to be able to play away from cover and go back in. There's so many chances for you to be able to still get that shield popped and still be able to swing out of it, right? So make sure you're paying attention to those wallbangs and that little straight fire that might occur. If that happens, of course, if your shield gets completely broken, don't panic. Don't start to look for a fight just because you need that shield back. It's going to come back eventually. So don't worry too much about it. Okay. I've noticed that some people, because of ISO, they are still using him kind of like an initiator. I don't really blame you. He didn't really have much of a kit to begin with. So uppercut, there was a lot of uppercut guides. I didn't make one for this particular video just simply because there are too many out there for me to kind of just overshadow. Uppercuts are still really useful to set up your team, but now you can use them a little bit more selfish. Like, okay, you can be a little bit more selfish with them. You can find an angle. Oh, this guy's around this corner. Just throw it. There's absolutely no reason why you should be holding on to these uppercuts. In fact, I would assume that the more you're using them, the better you're going to get with them. So I just kind of encourage you to just use them as selfish as you like and take those fights as much as you can. Okay. Last but not least, if you're somebody that has a team behind you, you're probably just going to dominate the win. Okay, the fights, you're going to dominate the sites. You're just going to get the win. Okay, so I encourage you guys to kind of look and pay attention to how many of these first bloods you can get. This way you can kind of encourage your team to sort of push with a numbers advantage, or just push with the fact that they have someone behind them. Okay, just be aware that you have someone that can back you up, usually because you have the ISO shield, and you're pretty much just going to win those fights. Okay, last but not least, his ultimate. If you haven't been too keen on his ult, he's a little bit weird. You essentially put him into a little bit of a domain expansion, and what occurs is you are now facing the opponent in essentially a 50-50 duel. However, like I mentioned just earlier, with a shield, it is no longer a 50-50. It is now a little bit more of an advantage. So the ISO ult now feels like an ult. You're actually able to win this fight, even though you don't feel as confident. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat to that, but when you're using this ult right here, I encourage you to try to always use it with a shield for maximum efficiency. If you do not have a shield, try not to use it, as you could potentially lose that fight unless you know that your team is able to kind of capitalize on that player that's been basically taken away. So when you're looking at those fights, there's a couple hints that I have for you, a couple tips that you can use to sort of win those fights. If you're somebody that's playing away from the ISO, usually, I mean, the meme right now is that you just pray. But usually I suggest that instead of moving around, you instead try to listen for footsteps. And if you don't have any footsteps from this ISO that is trying to swing you, you just stay back and you instead try to use the angle to your advantage because they're going to have shield. Try to see if you can pop it before you take that swing. Now, that might not be possible all the time. I know that there's some times where you will have maybe a deagle, for example, or you might not be able to use this shield to your advantage because he's not peeking, or the shield falls down too quickly and you're not able to take that fight. Again, the main problem that ISOs will have is panicking, because if they don't see anything, they don't see the enemy swinging, they're not able to find them towards the fight. I mean, they're going to panic, and there's a lot of chances for you to be able to take that fight and win it. Okay. I've noticed that in order for you to win that ISO ult, if you have that shield, it's pretty simply just hold one of the angles. Again, if they are not here, they're going to be on the right. If they're not making footsteps, then you can just assume they're going to still be within this area. So it's a small little micro flick. If you feel like you need to practice those, again, Aim Labs has a lot of different scenarios for micro flicks. But again, you're not going to feel that pressure as you have that shield. So don't worry too much about that. If you're running out of shield, a little bit of a tech that I found out is that you can actually catch someone with your ult. So let's say your bar is about to end and your shield's about to drop and you didn't catch anyone. If you heard noise somewhere else, you can use your ult to refresh that shield. So you can essentially use it to still keep your shield. You can use it to get a kill, because again, it's going to feel a little bit easier to take. And then you're going to also be able to use that to your advantage, as now you've not only gotten a player out of the field, you gotten your shield back, and now you have a kill for that refresh, right? So you're able to chain kills a little bit easier with that. So that out of the way, that's pretty much his changes. I need you guys to sort of understand that the way that the meta is going to be evolving might be towards this direction. A lot of 50-50s might suddenly start becoming a little bit harsher for players that are not too easy on the aim or the mechanics. So with that out of the way, I need you guys to just sort of try to use this to your advantage. Try to use these tips to your advantage. Try to use ISO while you can. A big reminder, again, we're about to start the new episode. Okay, so try to use them to your advantage. Assuming there's no changes, there might be. Try to use this to your advantage. Try to instant lock him. As you can see, he really has a lot of maps that he's effective in. So there's no reason for you to be scared and to not use them as much as you can. Try to use that to your advantage. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm going to close this class up, and then I'm going to open up the question period.